Hello, and welcome back to the Casey Undercover live reading series, Writing and Editing in Real Time. We are on the first book of the trilogy entitled Redacted, where Casey, having been ousted from her wire service for exposing the wrong entities, has returned to her hometown where she is currently working in the library. She's been given a notebook by an elderly gentleman, only to have him or someone who looks like him turn up dead on her property. This book looks like mainstream fiction, a disgraced journalist chasing a story, but it's also another way of asking deeper questions about truth, narrative control, memory, and who gets to decide what's real. Story lets us feel the stakes instead of arguing about them from a distance. So we are leaving chapter 10 and moving into chapter 11. Chapter 10 was a turning point. Casey overhears Nell admit the notebook should have been burned and realizes the Crow mining cover-up is not only real, but it's very personal. So she and Jenna launch a risky distraction to get Nell out of the building, giving Casey a narrow window to break into the archives and go after the truth before it disappears for good. Chapter 11. The second the exterior door swings shut, Jenna jumps out of the shadows like a smug little cryptid, her face glowing with mischief. "The witch is gone!" I exclaim in a whisper. "Move!" "Ready!" Jenna whispers back, pulling out her camera like this is the best outing she's ever been on. I clutch the archive key, motioning for her to stay low. We slip into the back hallway, my heartbeat ticking right alongside the clock, counting down the moments until Nell returns. The air is different here, thick, loaded. Secrets don't lie. They just settle in places like this, waiting for the right headstrong fool to jig them up. The archives smell like dust and forgotten confessions. Rows of mildewed records and shadowy secrets sit silently in their boxes, waiting for someone with enough determination to bring them to light. Jenna's grin fades as we get to work. "I feel like some threads are here," I say, running my fingers over a pile of old clippings. Hold on, I just found a mistake in the previous paragraph. Okay. "I feel like some threads are here," I say, running my fingers over a pile of old clippings. Jenna's brows knit. "People think nothing happens in towns like this, but that's exactly where the big players bury their messes, where nobody's looking." I don't argue. I know she's right. Back when I was chasing bylines, I saw it firsthand. Small towns with big secrets where silence is bought cheap and truth is the first thing to get paved over. The time passes in whispers and rustling pages. The silence is broken by the occasional chair scraping or Jenna muttering, "Nope, not this one." "Do you see anything at all on Crow mining?" I ask, flipping through a stack of brittle documents. "Something that might point us to why those tunnels are sealed?" Jenna shakes her head, pulling out a ledger pulling out a ledger bound in red leather. I don't, I still don't get why Nell would stash anything juicy here instead of burning it. "Because it's easy to bury things inside a system no one questions," I murmur, scanning a list of corporate acquisitions. That's what my editor used to say. It's like looking at a jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the box, and then the edges start to come together. Jenna finds a thick ledger labeled Crow Mining and Subsidiaries. "Corruption," she murmurs, flipping through. "The money goes deep. Corporations, politicians, the whole mess looks like." The columns are dense, numbers stack like bricks, but one thing jumps out. The losses aren't losses. They're payouts. "These aren't financial failures," yes, I say, leaning closer. "They're hiding something under these write-offs." Jenna flips to another page, jabs a finger over a list of names. Most are blacked out and unreadable. But one isn't. Victor Harland, Vice President of Operations. I exhale. Harland. That name is in the notebook. Jenna grins. Field trip. Maybe we should find him first. With the hour closing in, we uncover a rolled up tube labeled Industrial Redevelopment Proposal Crow Site. As we unroll it, my stomach tightens. It seems to be a development plan, but the tunnel layouts are overlaid with plans for heavy equipment installation and something else. What is that? Jenna asks, peering over my shoulder. I tap a section circled in red, marked with X's. If I had to guess, these were the entry points that were supposed to have been destroyed during the cave-ins. Jenna exhales. They didn't want anyone going back down there. My fingers drift to the notebook, my brain trying to connect the dots. Then we find it, the smoking gun, a brittle folder labeled Special Projects Classified. It yields a single piece of paper, a memo. It's stamped with the same triangle inside a circle emblem from the notebook. Jenna leans in, frowning. What is this coalition? Some kind of board of directors? I scan the document, my stomach tightening, because suddenly the notebook's warnings about the board don't feel like paranoia. They feel like a threat. We get to the last line. All breaches must be contained. No exceptions. I turn to Jenna, whose face is pale. What in holy heaven are we looking at, Batgirl? I lean back, finding one last fingernail to gnaw. I don't know. But I do know this. We just confirmed that whatever happened down in the mine was deliberate. We rapidly gather our findings, returning what we don't need when that familiar, awful prickling sensation creeps up the back of my neck. I turn slowly, and there she is, standing at the edge of the room, arms crossed, expression carved from ice. My stomach does a slow, unpleasant roll. Miss Price, Nels says, voice frigid. I wasn't aware the library was hosting a film extravaganza. Jenna flashes her best innocent smile, which is impressive given that she's currently holding a camera and looking extremely guilty. Just doing some research, she says lightly. Nell's lips purse. Any camera work requires a permit, she says, her attention sliding directly to me. Applied for through the town hall lest you disrupt the library's operations. I brace, knowing what's coming. Ms. Layton, she says, in a perfectly controlled, unforgiving tone that makes me feel like I'm 12. I will see you in my office. Now. This is not going to be good. The moment I step into Nell's office, I feel it. The pressure drop of an approaching Category 5 hurricane. She closes the door with controlled precision, motions to the chair across from her, and I sit because while I like to live dangerously, I also like to maintain close access. I'd also like to maintain close access to the records. The office is as always is pristine. Books lined up with military precision. Fresh daisies. Oops, so we have a repeat there. I have to get rid of that precision. Books lined up with military exactness. Fresh daisies that have no business being so sprightly, and a general atmosphere of stifling order. And on the shelf, a family photo that confirms my worst suspicions. The room's orders should bring her back to her carefully curated reality, but it doesn't. She stands by the desk, hands braced against its edge, her knuckles white and near visual steam pouring from her ears. When she finally lifts her gaze, I swear Zeus himself is making an appearance. That, she says in a voice crackling with impending impact, was not a garden club meeting. I blink. It wasn't? Nell straightens to her full, formidable height of 5'1¼ inches and crosses her arms. No, Miss Layton, she bites out. It was a community rally, specifically Lenape rally for land rights, complete with riotous speeches about land theft and filled with indignant, indigent Native Americans. My mouth opens before my brain catches up. Indignant, indigent, indigenous Indians? Nell cuts me off with a tiny raised finger. Don't try alliteration with me. I am in no mood. She takes a breath. Do you know what it's like to walk into a room thinking you're about to give your hastily written yet undeniably brilliant speech on sustainable gardening techniques, only to find out you're surrounded by the very people who invented those techniques? Her eyes blaze, and I am now convinced Zeus isn't just speaking through her, he's winding up, ready to hurl a lightning bolt in my direction. I shake my head. No, I have no idea what that's like. And instead of being among my peers, she continues, her tone now brimstone sharp, I find myself walking in as an unwitting representative of the rich white oppressor class whose very library sits on their sacred meeting ground. I slap a hand over my mouth to stifle a laugh. Nell's glare turns to molten. Nope, it was not a garden club meeting, Miss Layton. No, I did not deliver my speech because, surprise, surprise, Indigenous land rights take precedence over how to make your own mulch. I bite my cheek hard enough to make it bleed. And she isn't even done. I sat there, she continues, her eyes bright with something that isn't just anger anymore, humiliated as they spoke of their displacement, of being forced off their land, of consecrated sites destroyed for. She pauses. Her voice wavers for a second. For parking lots and pipelines, and that's not even all the travesty these people have been made to live through. She brings herself to a stop. It's beyond comprehension. She looks shaken in a way, human almost. I didn't know, she murmurs. Not really. I didn't know it was as bad as the stories they told. And that it's all still happening. I mean, that it happened here. I study her. For the first time since meeting Nell, I don't entirely dislike her. I whisper in earnest, What did you do? She exhales, letting her arms drop to her sides. I told them they can have their gatherings here and that I would support them in their quest. A beat. And that you would bring dream puffs to every meeting. The room goes silent. I stare at her. She stares back. A test and a challenge. I nod, slowly. So I guess they really like them then. I'm still processing the seismic shift of Nell's moral awakening when she returns, heels not so efficiently click-clacking against the polished tile, that extra layer of furious determination now lifted off her daunting form. Jenna, who has been casually boning up on mining disasters like it's light bedtime reading, picks up on the shift. She subtly inches closer, pretending to read. Nell doesn't turn her head. Miss Price, she says, the Arctic wind returning, I'm banning you from this library until further notice. You are not a staff member, and your repeat unauthorized presence is disrupting my staff. Jenna blinks, caught off guard, quickly masking her flicker of nervousness. Fine, she says breezily. I'll see you later, Casey. She mouths, I'll fix this to me before heading for the door. The moment it closes behind her, Nell turns to me. Ms. Layton, she says, now fully resuming her furiously officious self, let's not waste time. You were given a notebook by the library's maintenance man, and you will return it immediately. I shake my head, forcing casualness. I think he prefers to be called Jerry, I say. At least that's what he calls himself. I mean, if third person counts. Nell's eyes narrow. She leans forward, lowering her voice. That notebook isn't some dusty relic. It contains records tied to dark events in this town's history. I stay perfectly still. If it's so important, why did you throw it out? Nell's jaw tightens. Because she hesitates, then regains control. I miscalculated. I believed it would be better forgotten. I was wrong. That notebook belongs here, not secreted into someone's misguided articles to be used against us. Oh, I know your background, Miss Layton. I know all about how you embarrassed a National Wire Service. You call it you call it bravery. I call it appalling lack of professional integrity. I will not let my one mistake be compounded by your zeal to resurrect your failed journalism career. I don't consider it completely failed, I say with a flush. A resurrection that comes at our expense. Nell taps her tiny foot. Your expense or the town's expense? I ask. Nell's composure fractures. Miss Layton, she says, her voice rising. I am not one to play games. Return the notebook or I will be forced to escalate this matter. Theft of library property is an arrestable offense. And just who will do that arresting? It isn't hard to figure out. But Nell's not bluffing. She isn't just following library rules, she's trying to atone for something. Or maybe outrun something. I don't trust people on a false crusade, whatever they tell themselves it's for. I don't have it, I say evenly. Nell's expression goes ice cold. Then you leave me no choice. She glances at the clock. If that notebook isn't returned by Tuesday at 9 a.m. after the forthcoming 3-day weekend, I will contact law enforcement. You have my word on that. She turns away and clickety clicks in brisk fury, her pocket sized shoulders rigid with resolve. The second she's gone, I let out my breath because I am not giving her the notebook. But I also don't want to be arrested. And that's a problem because Mal Whitaker undoubtedly wants the notebook too. Jenna. No, he definitely wants the notebook. Jenna's supposed to hand it over at dinner tomorrow night. Now I'm not so sure she shouldn't go. Not alone, of course. I search my memory banks for a name until I find it. Luke Anders. I ran into him in front of City Hall not long after I arrived here, recognizing him from high school. His, I should say, pictures in high school. In the high school sports hall of fame. So let's try that again. I ran into him in front of City Hall not long after I arrived here, recognizing him from pictures in the high school sports hall of fame. He had a football in one hand and a lacrosse stick in the other. His Tahoe lurked at the curb, all hard angles and black paint, the kind of unmarked vehicle that makes people check their speed limit when it pulls up behind them. Luke leaned against the driver's side, arms crossed, watching me like I was about to make his day more interesting. The Tahoe suited him. Big, unapologetic, built for impact. Could seat 7 in air-conditioned comfort. The grille was dented from some past encounter, and there was a scar of missing paint on the front bumper, as if whatever it met that day hadn't been worth breaking for. I glanced to the Tahoe. I glanced back at him. Did they cook you off the force, or did you... I'm sorry, I wrote that wrong. Or do you like impersonating a retired detective for fun? His mouth twitches. Nice to see you too, Casey. Several years older than me, he had been the popular football type, the kind that I would never have spoken to under normal circumstances. Of course, he and Jenna had dated, which is why he recalled my name. Sorry, I'm taking out that line that I just put in because it seemed we don't need it. Being ex military, a security specialist, and conveniently in my contacts list, I forced myself to consider expanding my resources. Because if Mal Whitaker thinks this is just a cute little game where he gets to cozy up to Jenna and walk away with the prize, he's in for a rude awakening. He's she's not handing my notebook over. Not to him, not to anyone. He was in the photo in Nell's office. Was he her son? It's hard to imagine Nell softening long enough to cradle something, anything, much less consenting to the messy human logistics required to produce a human child. If he presses, Jen is going to have to flash that dangerous little grin of hers and tell him the hard truth that if he wants the notebook, he'll have to fight his mommy for it. He'll have to fight his mommy for it. Okay, so that concludes chapter 11, and I'll see you back on Monday with chapter 12. Bye now.